In this podcast episode, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. shares his perspectives on several critical issues facing America today, including the alarming rise in autism rates, vaccine safety, government transparency regarding historical assassinations, and the broader challenges within the healthcare and political systems. The discussion also touches on his role as Secretary of Health and Human Services and his efforts to reform entrenched institutions. RFK Jr. begins by addressing the dramatic increase in autism diagnoses, a phenomenon he attributes in part to vaccine-related injuries that have been systematically ignored or suppressed by government agencies. He recounts how early studies commissioned by the CDC in 1999 revealed a significant correlation between vaccines and autism risk, but these findings were deliberately buried through data manipulation. According to him, the CDC has consistently failed to conduct the comprehensive, multifaceted research recommended by the Institute of Medicine, instead relying on limited epidemiological studies that do not adequately compare vaccinated and unvaccinated populations. As Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr. is spearheading a new initiative to conduct transparent, rigorous scientific studies on vaccine safety. This includes making large health databases public for independent researchers and encouraging a broad scientific community to investigate potential links between vaccines and neurological disorders. He emphasizes the importance of replicability in scientific research, a standard he claims has been neglected by institutions like the NIH and CDC, partly due to conflicts of interest and financial incentives that prioritize pharmaceutical profits over public health. The conversation delves into the systemic issues plaguing the American healthcare system, where financial incentives often encourage sickness rather than wellness. RFK Jr. highlights how pharmaceutical companies, insurance providers, hospitals, and even doctors are embedded in a network that profits from chronic illness. He points out that many doctors are employed by corporations that prioritize revenue generation, and insurance companies benefit financially from a large, sick population. This creates a perverse incentive structure that undermines genuine medical care. He also critiques the mainstream media's complicity in protecting pharmaceutical interests, noting that pharmaceutical advertising constitutes a significant portion of their revenue. This financial dependence leads to censorship and suppression of dissenting voices, including his own, especially on topics like vaccine safety. RFK Jr. recounts how he was banned from major media platforms despite presenting data sourced from government databases and peer-reviewed studies. He describes a coordinated effort by government and social media companies to label inconvenient truths as malinformation, a term used to justify censorship of factually accurate but politically inconvenient information. RFK Jr. discusses the 1986 National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, which grants vaccine manufacturers immunity from lawsuits, complicating efforts to hold companies accountable for vaccine-related injuries. He acknowledges the program's intent to provide compensation to injured individuals, but criticizes its slow, adversarial nature and the Department of Justice's role in protecting the vaccine industry rather than the injured. He is actively working to reform this system to make it more responsive and just, including expanding the statute of limitations and improving transparency. He also addresses the surge in reported injuries following COVID-19 vaccinations, noting that adverse events reported to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, VAERS, increased dramatically. However, he points out that VAERS is voluntary and underreports injuries, and that CDC rejected a more effective machine learning system designed to detect vaccine injuries more accurately. RFK Jr. expresses skepticism about the safety of mRNA vaccine technology, emphasizing the need for thorough, independent safety studies. A significant part of RFK Jr.'s mission involves leveraging artificial intelligence to revolutionize healthcare data analysis. He describes efforts to implement AI across federal health agencies to detect fraud, optimize drug approvals, and analyze population health data more effectively. By making health data publicly accessible and encouraging independent research, he hopes to restore trust in public health institutions and provide the American people with reliable, transparent information. RFK Jr. reflects on the current political climate, noting the deep partisanship that has overtaken American politics. He argues that President Trump has paradoxically shaped both Republican and Democratic platforms, with Democrats often opposing policies simply because Trump supports them. He laments the erosion of traditional party values and the rise of knee-jerk opposition that undermines honest policy debate. Despite initial skepticism, RFK Jr. praises President Trump's leadership, describing him as a complex, empathetic figure who inspires hope and patriotism. He appreciates Trump's focus on economic reform, reducing government debt, and addressing trade deficits, viewing these efforts as crucial to reversing America's decline. RFK Jr. also shares personal anecdotes about the president's surprising depth of knowledge and emotional connection to cultural and social issues. Turning to historical matters, RFK Jr. discusses ongoing efforts to declassify files related to the assassinations of his uncle, President John F. Kennedy, his father, Robert F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. While he expresses confidence that President Trump will release all accessible documents, he does not expect any groundbreaking revelations. He asserts that the evidence already available conclusively shows that his uncle's assassination was the result of a conspiracy, a conclusion supported by congressional investigations in the 1970s. Regarding his father's assassination, RFK Jr. highlights the lack of thorough investigation and the destruction of critical evidence by law enforcement. He points to eyewitness accounts and suspicious circumstances suggesting multiple shooters and possible involvement of intelligence agencies. He calls for renewed investigation and transparency, emphasizing the importance of uncovering the full truth.